I love the worst of me is the affirmation of the day. Why does it feel so good to be bad? I wondered as after playing another villainous character in an acting audition, the adult part of me didn't register what the child in me knew. It's freeing to be all of you, the child whispered. The child version of you was likely punished for any mischief or punished themselves carrying shame or guilt for bad behavior. The adult of you likely knows better, and you consciously don't create harm or hurt, but knows that mistakes happen. So when you make mistakes, do you forgive you? How long does it take? How long do you keep inflicting pain towards yourself or others after committing error or hurt or harm? A friend asked me one time how I had so much chill. Have I ever felt anger or hatred or envy? I replied, yes, deeply. And I've allowed myself more than just those feelings. I allowed it all. I allowed the rage to build into a fantasy of revenge in my mind. And then I stood on the other side of that and I felt regret. Or I felt more anger, more pain that festered inside of me, and little satisfaction, more of the desire to continue to pass it along as a natural next step. Then I returned to my mind again and I envisioned another fantasy. I envisioned the version where I took the route of peace. There, in that version, I acted as the highest of me, forgiving any pain that was afflicted upon me or others. I returned to love, which felt better. It felt like completion, the satisfaction that I couldn't feel in the former fantasy. But I understand why we act out. If not, I'd be out of touch. In the mind of duality, there is right and wrong, good and bad. That's not our mind. It's simple to glaze over the full spectrum of being and label it two sides. There's just seas of gray, harder to decipher, so only you can. We're here to swim in the sea of gray and to see the full spectrum, to be human, to love the best and the worst and everything in between. Hey you, I'm Anisa. Today's video is for anyone who is done shaming themselves, who's retiring from any form of suppressing their internal emotional states and not honoring what they're feeling inside and tuning into those feelings, because they notice that if they don't tune into those feelings, they find themselves feeling like a complete zombie or numb to the world or lacking in motivation and starting to get really blasé. And that's a sign of maybe entering more of a depression mode or entering more of a detached state from our emotional heart state, which is never a really good sign. It's usually a sign that we need to go back in there and tune into what's going on inside of us. I sometimes share we're often expressed or depressed. And that's how I feel is the case for many artists. And so it's really important to honor the artist within you. We are all artists. Most of my videos are reflections from my lived experience, as I believe we are all each other's healers. We provide a mirror to each other to be able to see ourselves more clearly. I hope that in my sharing my story, insights, takeaways this week, it supports you in releasing shame, releasing any kind of suppression of your wild self, emotional self, and honoring more freeness inside of you, allowing yourself to feel more of your inner power is always my goal. If you enjoy this video, please like it. It supports the algorithm in moving forward. And if you want to keep seeing videos like this, subscribe to the channel to be aware of when I upload each week. So this video is for anyone who needs to honor themselves more fully, honor the worst of themselves, honor their anger, honor their frustration, honor their darker emotions, and hopefully has found healthy vices to support those. One of mine is acting, my career, because it provides a very safe space for me to express the full range of emotion within me through characters. But maybe you found an outlet, or maybe you're looking for one. Maybe it will be surfing or a high stakes environment, maybe Muay Thai, MMA, something physical I always think is great, or something creative, journaling, saying to yourself every single morning, how am I feeling? What is coming through me? How am I doing? And being able to write that down, being able to dance it out, being able to sing how you're feeling, finding songs that are aligned with your emotional states and moods, I found deeply validating. So whatever it is for you, I hope that you find a really healthy place to continue to honor the full expression of your emotions. And in today's video, we'll get back to the importance of really tapping into all that we are emotionally, and that being the core essence of being a human being. So for today's video, first I shared the writing of today, as I find it a really helpful tool to bring you into where my heart state was at in this topic arising for me. But next, I'll get into the story explicitly of how this topic became relevant to me and takeaways, so that you can have some more tangible takeaways to honor the full spectrum of emotion in you and understand why it's so valuable to honor your anger and your hatred and your rage, any other shame or guilt or all the craziness of the ego and the feelings that are attached to that. All of it so juicy, makes for such interesting characters that we get to be. It also doesn't mean that we have to act on every single one of them. So this topic became relevant to me this week as another role that I'm playing, a more dark character. It came out, Aaron Hernandez. I play this role, Kim, and she is a character who's operating from a place of pain. She's an NFL wife, and she's contributing to a bit of the hazing of Shayana Hernandez in the series. And it came back to me, the story of why do I continue to play these villainous roles and characters. I held a subconscious belief up until 2017 that I was a bad person. And it didn't come through in very pronounced ways in my life. It was just in the inner critic. Like many of us have, we have an inner critic in our mind that's sitting there judging, criticizing, shaming, putting a lot of pressure on our way of existence. And I wasn't really so aware of mine until 2017 and how it was impacting me. It showed up most hugely in my romantic life and accepting partners that were less than loving. I didn't love myself so hugely that it became a disparity between the way that I treated myself and the way that I was being treated. Going back to Anisa's childhood as a kid, she experienced a lot of anger, and in her nuclear family, she didn't feel like she was able to express that anger and be loved. And so the inner story for Anisa and me is that Anisa was a bad person every time she felt anger and expressed it, that she was this villain. And so she worked to suppress that anger because she saw how scared her family, nuclear family around her, became when she went into fits around whatever little kid things that she was experiencing. And now as an adult, I see that inner child in me, and I know that that child was crying for love and felt this deep sense of isolation and loneliness and was going through all of this feeling and sensitivity and really wanted to be like grabbed and hugged, even though she would fight you in those moments specifically. And the people who were around me thought that I would literally fight them, and they were scared of me. And I fully understand that, and therefore have grown just this deep compassion and empathy for people who enter rage states or anger states. And that's my attraction also to these villainous roles, is just having a deep level of empathy for folks who are feeling this level of intensity emotionally within them. And there are so many people who are so scared and fearful of them because of that. And I also just am so aware of that's like a cry for help, a call for help and love and attention. And they don't even consciously know it at times. But going back to Anisa child, it's not the fault of the people around her that they saw this little kid cry, yelling, having anger fits, and they were like, oh, get away, or you need to act and behave differently. It's that they had suppressed that own emotion within them, and that's what happens, and that's how the cycle continues. The more that we don't honor the full spectrum of our emotions, the more that we suppress it, the more that we're not able to accept it in other people. And the highest form of love is that divine acceptance. That unconditional love is actually an acceptance of the full being of all the people, of all the emotions, be in a place of acceptance of them, not and I'm going to embody that, I want to mirror that, I want to take more of that in, but I just accept that that's where you're at. And I know that that's okay, because I also am a mirror to you, and I have that same thing within me. I see anger and rage and fits. I know that I'm capable of the same exact thing. And because of that, I don't shame you for that, nor do I shame myself. So what helped break me into a place of deeper love and deeper compassion was going through heartbreak and going through being in a relationship where I didn't receive the love and treatment that I felt I deserved, and having the awareness of that. And I think it's often for people pain that softens them into a state of more loving. And in that state of more loving, then you get to love more parts of yourself. And over time you realize that child in you was so lovable, and this adult you is so lovable, and all of the parts of yourself, whether it's envy or jealousy or rage or anger that you might have suppressed and deemed as bad or the worst of you, is actually deeply lovable and so needing of love, because of how much we often minimize, diminish, suppress those types of feelings and the ways that it shows up, the shadow-like ways that it shows up, when we don't allow it to exist. It's a very unfortunate cycle that begins to happen, as I shared in my writing, that we want to then act out more anger, more rage. We kind of give more ultimately to these areas that deserve to be healed and forgiven and hugged and held with deeper love and compassion, and how they dissolve after that leads us to a level of peacefulness, actually. As I've continued to honor more of the full spectrum of emotion within myself, the more that I find all characters more interesting, the more love and compassion I feel to all of these sides of myself. Writing continues to be a gateway for me to honor more of that, dancing, expressing myself really, and tuning into what the true emotional states that I'm feeling are. And I encourage you to do the same. And it's so deeply healthy for you to honor where you're at and really explore your inner world more deeply, because there's so much richness there, and there's so much power there, and there's so much opportunity for you to bring a level of peacefulness within yourself that will bleed into all areas of your life. As I shared in the writing, what would it look like for you to forgive yourself for the darker emotions that you feel, for the mistakes that you've made, for the errors you've committed, for the people that you've hurt, for the unwanted harm that you've created? Forgive yourself for a lot of that, to bring more healing and more love and more compassion to that part of you that acted and made a mistake, or acted in a less favorable, worst version of yourself. What would it look like to forgive them today, or sooner than later? Because in that forgiveness, you're giving so many people more opportunity for healing and compassion and love and forgiveness of themselves. You're opening a lot more spaciousness in the world by honoring it in your own inner world, in the own landscape that is within you. Because you are a universe within yourself, and it is so deeply true that the more that you create healing within yourself, the more that you heal the world. We would be so much healthier if we allowed the love that we pour towards the parts of ourselves that we already love and we love to affirm and people love to affirm, if we pour that same love towards the parts of us that we do not. If you're not sure what you are suppressing emotionally within yourself, it's helpful to look at the world around you, to look at others that you deem as other, or people that you do not like, and see what qualities in them provide a trigger to you, for you to see yourself more clearly, for you to honor more of that in you. A person who stole this parking spot, why is it so bothersome to me that they conducted this behavior? Oh, it signaled an entitlement. In what ways do I not honor my own entitlement? I obviously have an ego too. this is actually a real experience for me, I too feel entitlement and I don't act on that entitlement. And why don't I act on that entitlement? Why do I shame myself when I act on entitlement? Some of my thoughts and processes when my parking spot was taken yesterday. And that's just a small example of like the many ways in which we sometimes can challenge our ego, challenge our labeling of other people, and go through the self-inquiry process of understanding why is it that people are bothersome. We label things good, bad, and we go about world in this level of discernment. The reality is sometimes our egos are going to flare. Sometimes we're going to be a little wild. We're going to be a little extra. We're going to be a little uncomfortable and unsafe to others. And in those times and in those moments, how can we not shame ourselves, but yes, continue to tame ourselves? I think the ego definitely deserves some taming so that we create a healthier world, a safer feeling world for others. I think most people would appreciate that. But there's also room to be more expressive and more honoring of all those sides of ourselves that exist within us. Even if we're not choosing to act on them, we can honor that they're within us. If you've enjoyed this video, like it. Please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel so that we can continue growing here on YouTube, uploading videos each week. I so appreciate you being here, and I hope that this supported your tuning into what sides of you deem to be your worst or your darkness or your bad, and how you can love them more deeply, how you can throw more peace and love and compassion their way so that you feel more spaciousness to honor that in others, and for others to honor that in others. And the ripple effect goes on that way. It's a beautiful thing to see the way that the light spreads. I'm sending you so much love as you approach this week and doing that. And yeah, appreciate you being here. Much love.